Let's combat and fight back with no threats. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classes. We keep grinding on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth and we tuned in to Dr. Maya.
Peace and love, family. Welcome to another Truth to Power Talk with your sister, Dr. Maat. Thank you for joining another powerful discussion. And tonight I have with me another powerful guest, but he is no stranger to this platform, Dr. Tdka Kilimanjaro. Doctor, how are you tonight?
I'm good, Dr. Maat. Thank you for inviting me again to clarify some things. I always appreciate the time spent with you.
And I always appreciate you, Doctor, coming on, making time to come onto the platform to share, your wisdom with me and with my audience. So family, he's no stranger to this platform. Dr. Tdka Kilimanjaro is the director of assessment and research at a university in North Carolina. And he's one of the founders of the University of Kemet Press right now. And I'm holding up his latest book on organization. And a lot of the information that we will be discussing tonight is coming from his book, Bach. All right. It says United States Birth, Development, Decline, and Regression Before the Leap, Passing Away, 1607 to the present. But family, before we get started, take a moment out to number one, thumb up this video, family. Head on over to YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, thumb up this video. And then I want you to share this video, okay? Because YouTube works based on algorithms and we want to get this information out to the people. And the only way we can get this information out to the people is if we share. So share this video. And also, if you have not subscribed to my channel, and I see that there are people watching from Facebook, head on over to YouTube, type in Dr. Maat. Okay, subscribe and be sure to hit the notification bell so that as soon as I go live, you will be notified. Also, family, if you missed other Truth to Power talks, don't worry. Dr. Maat has created a playlist on my YouTube channel. Okay, so there's a playlist entitled Truth to Power Talk. And so if you've missed any of the previous discussions that I have, just click on the playlist, sit back, relax, and enjoy, okay? And also, family, we are getting ready to start up the Resurgence of the African Mind book club again. We finished reading Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery by Dr. Naeem Akbar. Then we took a break for a couple of months, but we are gonna, start it back up, guys. So be sure to look out for the announcement date or the announcement for the next book that we will be reading. All right, so Doc, I had to reach out to you. Okay, so as you know, Joe Biden he won the election. Last week, and people were excited about it, and the thinkers, and we call it the warriors, the Asafo. There was a lot of discussion happening amongst the thinkers and amongst the warriors, and we saw people were excited, they were happy, people were dancing in the street, and this is black and white, black, white, Hispanic, they were all partying because Joe Biden won. And so I started thinking, I said, well, wait a minute, what does his election mean for black people? So we see black people celebrating in his winning of the presidency, but my question became, well, what does this mean for us? So I said, you know what? I know the perfect person to reach out to. I have to reach out to the esteemed elder scholar, Dr. Tdka Kilimanjaro, to just kind of pick his brain about what we just witnessed and what it means for black people. So Doc, I just want to pose my first question to you before we kind of get into the discussion at hand. There are folks who have been telling us, especially the boomers, and I love the baby boomers. My parents are boomers. And so they're like, vote or die. If you gotta vote, you gotta vote. If you don't vote, you don't have anything to say. If you don't vote, so it's this push to vote, is this push to participate in the political process on the state and federal level. So Doc, my question to you is, since we were able to vote, how has voting impacted Black Americans?
Okay, well, let's go back and sum up how this country formed and then the context of which put us in the situations we're in underneath whites. Clearly, everyone knows Columbus, 1492, the invasions into the Caribbean islands and parts of South and Central America. Everyone knows that the whites then got on these boats after 1492 and flooded into South America, Central America, and the Caribbean. They destroyed the Aztec Empire, killed all these people, murdered them, butchered them. They destroyed the Inca Empire, butchered, murdered all these people. I mean, and again, they not only did it with diseases, but mainly military force. To give you an example of it, Atahualpa was the king of ruler and king of the Inca Empire when the invading Spaniards came in. The Spaniards had 169 soldiers, about 35 horses, and half of them had guns. In less than a day, the whites were able to defeat and take charge, defeat 80,000 soldiers from the Inca and take Atahualpa as a prisoner. And over a few months' time, they ransomed him for about a house load of gold, just like a 3-bedroom house load of gold. And then they cut his throat, pulled him up on a stake and cut his throat in front of the population. And in less than 15 years, they had destroyed that empire, murdered hundreds of millions of people, tens of millions of people from the region up to the Aztec Empire. They had killed them. And so that was the standard bearer for the process by which whites came in. They were more advanced technologically than the populations they were meeting. And they also had a situation with diseases that they could give these populations who had no immunities to them, had not run into people with those types of diseases, so it kills millions of them. I say all that to say that by 1607, 1609, the British, English, Jamestown, the settlements that took place there laid the foundation for the United States. And quickly, as we get through that, the whites early on saw that they were starving to death. You go and read some of the Smithsonian reports about the settlements. They were eating each other, cannibals. They were eating each other. So go just read the Smithsonian reports and you'll get the data on that. And so this is the terrible situation they were in before the Chechens or the Indians helped them to get through a few Thanksgivings. And in thanks for that helping them, the whites attacked and seized their land, more and more land. By the time it was clear that by the early 1650s, 1660s, that they needed a cash crop, some way in which to get resources from the mother country, Britain, tobacco became the central foundational crop. It was money. You know, people get caught up in paper money and gold and silver, but in those periods, it was very clear what the money sources were. It was money. Tobacco became money. As you know, later on, cotton became money. It was the whole basis for the credit system in the United States, as you will get to get that worked out in Bach. The whole credit system, the entire credit system was based on that cotton that Black people were picking. Well, needless to say, these white people seized this land and needed somebody to work it. This is where the seizure of Black people on the western coasts of Africa became the central source of them gaining what was necessary to build their economy. They have no economy. As I said before, they were starving to death. They have no economy without working to death Black people. They have no United States of America without Black people being worked to death to build it. Because not only as they seized the land, they needed somebody to work it, they didn't even have an economic formula to force the white people to work that land. Even with this indentured servant process they had going on, white people would break away from that. They weren't going to go along with it very long. So they actually seized these Blacks, us, our ancestors, and put us to work on the eastern coast. And as you know, slavery or our enslavement built this country from the east to the west, ultimately up to the area around the Mississippi River. So I wanted to get that in place just to discuss how we were brought here under these conditions and forced in the most inhumane ways, raped, brutalized, beaten, bred like animals, just bred like animals to produce more enslaved Africans to work this land. Now, having said that, in the process of all this, they fought what they call a revolutionary war, and really it was a national liberation movement from Britain that they fought a war, and they won. The whites over here won. The 13 colonies were able to, after 1776, in time, by 1789, they had won that war and were setting up their own government. And this is where we begin to discuss the whole issue around government and voting. As you can see in box square, we discussed on page 357 and 355, the branches of government that these whites set up. They had 7 articles of confederation, lay out this tripartite division of federal government. And the part that's most important, yes, that's it. The part that's most important is that they had 3 branches of governments that they set up. This was the capitalist state apparatus that they set up. They had a legislative branch that makes the laws, and within that, there's a Senate and a House. So the important discussion here will be around the Senate, because the Senate makes essentially all the decisions around who's going to end up taking these positions in government and carrying certain things out, just like your Supreme Court. You saw that just go through, last week, where this woman, it's almost like a neo-Nazi Supreme Court right now, was just put in there because the Senate had a majority of like neo-Nazi senators who voted, who made sure she got in there. And you remember when Obama was in place, these neo-Nazi senators made sure he could not put a moderate in there.
That's right.
See, that they made sure of that. So it's important to understand it's not just the president. Okay, you got a legislative branch that makes the laws, and you got a Senate that determines what takes place around the laws that are made. Who's going to take those positions to implement those laws? The Senate is in charge of that. And then there's the executive branch, which carries out the laws, principally with a president or vice president and his or her cabinet. And that's an important discussion, because you see what Trump is doing right now, where he's stacking, he's firing people and putting his people in positions as he leaves.
That's right.
It's most important, and these are civil servant positions. So those people are going to be allowed to stay in there in many of those places because of the civil servant laws. I mean, the laws around civil servants. So he's stacking these positions with his people. So we'll talk about that later, the cabinet. And again, these are neo-Nazis now. And most Black people really have no understanding of what's unfolding in this country. And this is why this discussion is so important. These are neo-Nazis, like Nazi Germany, just like Hitler. That's right. That's what's right, in place now. And so we have to discuss that. And then there's the judicial branch, which we just discussed about them quickly rushing to put in to stack the courts. It's like 7-2 now. Or let's say 6.5-2. 7-2. It's 9 Supreme Court members, and 7 of those are far right conservatives and are Nazis, fascists. This is what's on the Supreme Court. And so obviously you have the Supreme Court, and then you have the appellate court levels and other court, other federal courts. This is what's at the foundation of evaluating and interpreting the laws. This is most important. So it's not just a question of what president got in office. It's a question of what's in the judicial branch, which is 7-2 neo-Nazi conservatives. That's what's there. And so they're going to always interpret the Constitution on the Nazi right-wing side. Right. Okay, so that's first thing. So that's in place. And Trump put that in place because it was 5-4 when he came in. Okay, on the moderate side, but now it's 7-2 on the Nazi right wing side. So that's in place. And then there's a legislative branch where the Senate is dominated by right wing Nazis. You see, the House has no power, so it's called a lower house for a reason, because it doesn't have much power. The Senate makes these decisions, like a Roman Senate. That's the place where the decisions are made. And so in the final analysis, if a person gets an understanding of that tripartite system, they can understand the role of a president. So let's get to that. So they put that system in place. They put in place in 1789 that this is a federal republic. They put in place the supreme constitutional prototypes for each state, meaning in substance, you have state constitutions that are a reflection and in the context of the federal constitution. And then they put in guidelines for relationships between these federal and state constitutions. So that was done in 1789 and surrounding time period. The most important part that came out of that was a civil war ensued later on, 1865, and Black folk after that not only helped the North win that civil war, and in the process in direct slavery for most Blacks, except when they pulled their situation with this amendment, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. The 13th Amendment ended slavery except in prison, which is important, a discussion around that. And then the 14th Amendment gave citizenship under circumstances to Black people. And then the 15th Amendment supposedly gave Black men the right to vote. So that's the context for our discussion around the right to vote. Because as soon as Black folk got the right to vote, the Black men got the right to vote. They actually took over some House and Senate in the South, in South Carolina and North Carolina. They were sending House of Representatives and Senate members to Congress. And so the whole question around voting is important because Blacks knew then that they could make some modifications and changes with respect to the federal level of government if they were able to go to Congress, and they did. You had the foundation for the educational reform. That's Black people doing that, forcing that hand through voting in these state and federal state and federal elections. And so I say all that to say, they knew clearly the importance of voting in and around after 1865. They knew. Now again, the whites did too, because by the 1880s, the whites and the Klan were running around murdering people, making certain they couldn't vote. Burning their houses down, shooting them. Every type of poll tax was put in place. Every type of system to keep people from being on voting rolls were put in place. And then outright murder was put in place. And even if people then got a chance to vote, they would put them out the house, put them off the land if they were renting, as they were renting. So Blacks then knew how important voting was, because it was a tangible end product to it, because it was tied directly to them, meaning they were putting in Black people in these positions, and they weren't putting in Uncle Toms in these positions. These people wanted to try to get some education. They were trying to get some laws that, changes in laws that allowed them to have land. They were doing all kinds of things that put them in a position to benefit from voting. So voting had a basic fundamental basis for them in that period after slavery. Now, again, the Black Reconstruction period, I call it, just like Du Bois called it, it didn't last very long.
Right.
And as soon as the whites could muster the point of organizing themselves around Forrest Gump and the Ku Klux Klan, literally for almost 100 years, they stifle our ability to hold any office and even vote in the South. So you see how important it is when a population keeps you from doing it. You see, for almost 100 years into the 1950s, the whites kept us from voting, especially in the South, throughout the South. And this is the area right now, it's the most contested area for the Nazis. The Nazis have, Nazi, when I call them fascist Nazis.
That's right.
Hitler, they are completely controlling the South. And the only thing that's changing that is a few Black people and others are organizing themselves to put, to give Black people the right to vote again and get them registered and everything else. I think her name is Abrams. I forgot her first.
Stacey Abrams.
Stacey Abrams
down in Georgia.
She's out on the street. Out on the street. And I understand that she helped to organize the people voting and registering to vote for 700,000 people. That's quite a bit. So I say all that to say, that's the context that we want to discuss that in, because if voting was no good, why do you think for 100 years white people fought so hard to keep us from voting? Mm-hmm. And you obviously know in that little 7 to 13 years, you know, there's still some argument over how long it lasted of the Reconstruction period, that Black folk got key positions in the House and the Senate and on these state level government levels, and got major things done, not only for Black folk, but in general, passed major legislation that put positive results in Black folks' lives, like food, clothing, shelter, education, healthcare. Those types of things they fought for, and even protection from against you know, these white people killing us just on the street and getting away with it. So I say all that to say, they would not have fought so hard for almost 100 years to keep us from voting in things if it were not important. So 1896 is Plessy versus Ferguson, as you know, and that is the whole business around Black folk segregation being legitimized for another almost 60 years, Plessy versus Ferguson. And segregation was a tremendous difficulty for Black folk. Now, again, obviously people defend certain things that came out of it, a few Black businesses, etc. But we could not do anything. We couldn't go anywhere. We were literally trapped in a country, almost like we were imprisoned in the country with Plessy versus Ferguson. So the fight that laid the foundation for the civil rights movement to break us through that, to be able to go to some of these institutions, that was King's leadership in that movement that opened the way for that. I shouldn't say just his, but you know, Rosa Parks was central early on. But once they opened the way, then you had these fights for the Voting Rights Acts, 1965, etc. So I say all that to say, if it were not important, they wouldn't have fought for 100 years to keep you from getting it. So my answer is, it's very important. Voting is very important.
So, and I also asked Doc, how did it impact us? How did voting, how did us participating in the process benefit us?
Well, directly early on, it benefited us in every area that we sent representatives to. The only problem over the years, recently, over the last 30 to 40 years, is we've got a class of Black people that moves up from the working class to the upper middle class that are the ones getting in government too. And once they get in there, voted in, they're representing the interests of their class, more so representing the interests of Black people, the race in general. And so what you get out of that is people who are gonna get in there and tell you one thing and do the opposite thing. So we cannot calibrate having a Black person in office with substantial improvements in our lives now, because the fact that many of them that get in have been funded by ruling class whites to carry out a certain mandate. They'll tell you a lie, but they know they're gonna, you know, who were the piper who paid them, they're gonna carry out the mandate of them. So in the past, it was a direct correlation there.
Okay.
In the I'm just trying to get that right to you, that right after the Civil War and the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment was in place, you ended slavery, at least direct slavery, except in prison. And then you got a certain modified form of citizenship. And then you got men with the right to vote. Black women didn't get the right to vote, didn't get it until after the 1920s. And then you have a situation where the black men that were being sent to Congress, the state and the federal level, were actually carrying out direct things that the blacks wanted them to do, because the fact of the matter is whites weren't funding them to get into office. Black people knew who was trying to run for office and they voted for him. So I say all that to say, it was meaningful then, directly. And then after we went for almost 100 years without being able to get members in Congress and get members to be voted in state houses, and all the white people, even though we were majority in these counties, 80 and 90% sometime in the South, we could not even vote. We could not put our people in. They kept us from doing that. They kept us from voting. So within that 100-year period, let's say from 1880, 85 till around 1960 to 70, we didn't have any political power, especially in the South. We had only marginal political power in the North and the West. It's marginal, very low end. But having said that, it was important to get that right to vote again. And so now all you're seeing, this is why people are confused about it, is that you have a situation where blacks have moved up, not only ideologically with respect to their class longings, but also with money.
Right.
And the ones who are getting in there are being paid to get in there by the ruling class's money. And so they'll tell you one thing and they're gonna do what the money tells them to do. Always. Let's say that again. They're gonna always do what the money tells them to do. So no matter what they tell you, you will get to Biden. No matter what Biden tells you, he's gonna do what the money tells him to do. So that's why it's so confusing at this point. So no, we have benefited from it over time. That would be a terrible question to answer in the negative, because we have benefited every step of the way.
And Doc, let me
start getting in the 80s and the 90s where the class question came in.
And I think, and I'm glad that you said that, Dr. Kilimanjaro, because for my age group, you know, we're 80s babies, right?
Yes.
And so we've been looking at this saying, wait a minute, you're telling us to vote. We're voting for these people and they're not operating in our best interest. So in my age group, and that's the folks that are in their 30s and 40s, right now, we're like, well, maybe we need to sit it out, because it seems like when we vote, these people aren't operating in our best interest. So we're questioning, you know, should we be voting or so it's a lot of discussion going on with the 80s babies and the 90s babies, because we're like, hold up, we're looking at our lives over the past 30, 40 years, and we see that we're voting for people who, when they get in office, they don't operate in our best interest. So that's why I asked you, well, how has voting impacted us? And you clearly said, Dr. Kilimanjaro, that we have benefited from voting, you know, and you broke down the history, and then you said, and then I love what you said. You said, but in the last 30 or 40 years, you know, you have observed what we've observed, that we've been voting for people who aren't operating in our interests.
That's right. I'm glad you summed that up, because what I did say was, initially we fought so hard to get that voting ability right after slavery. And because that vote was attached to a black person who was attached to a community coming out of slavery, they had a clear view of what they had to do to improve the environment they were coming out of.
Come on.
That's what I just said. And most nobody can dispute that. They were tied directly to their communities. Okay, so when they were voting in the office, they wasn't taking money from white people to carry out white people's objectives. They were carrying out what the black people who voted them into office for that 2 to 4 years, they were carrying that out. Now that changed in the 80s and the 90s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And I'll give you a good example of it. I don't know the exact name. I forgot the names of it, but I remember what took place in New Jersey, where Amari Baraka and his group were trying to get these black people running for mayor to side with black nationalism and back black Pan-Africanism. And he said he was doing that when he was running for office. And he got in there, I forgot his name, but I wanted to bring that up. But he got in there and they wondered why he did nothing to help them. You see what I'm saying? And so he not only turned against them. And so I said all that to say that was my first understanding that whoever pays the piper calls the tunes.
That's right.
And so when you saw that happen in New Jersey in the 70s, you would know that that's what's been happening ever since. All these black folk getting in these positions of government. This is a capitalist government. Remember, I went through that in detail early on just to explain to you who set the government up in the first place. These are white men who are ruling class white men setting a government up and determining who can run and who can be funded, how they're going to be funded. They set it up so they always end up with the choice that they want, even though it's not the specific choice. It may be a general choice. This is the pool we're going to draw from. They keep out anybody that got real revolutionary aspirations. You're kept out of that pool. So what you see running for office is what they have vetted and allowed you to vote for. So let's say that again.
Say it again.
These people that are running for office throughout this country have been vetted through a capitalist cipher. And in the final analysis, they have been allowed for you to vote for them. They're there, you're allowed to vote for them because they have passed censorship. And the important part about understanding passing censorship is that they're tethered. When they say that they're upholding the Constitution, they're tethered to the white ruling class's Constitution. So again, we're saying that clearly that they're not going to be able to independently do anything for you anyway. And having said that, it's even worse now because of the class distinction of the black person who's getting these jobs. Same thing with whites too, because they are tied to the money source.
That's right.
That put them in office. And it's usually corporations, money, but mainly rich ruling class members who have financed them to these positions of power. So they're not going to do much of anything for you. But we'll discuss what we have to do around the Biden and Trump part next. But I want to get that across. It has changed within the last 30 to 40 years. That's what I said.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Kilimanjaro. So my next question is this. What are your thoughts about voting for the lesser of two evils? In the community, we often hear, and I've actually said this and had this discussion with my mother. I said, I don't like either candidate. And she said, well, you got to vote for the lesser of two evils. And so I grew up, in 40 years hearing, well, you may not like these people, but you got to vote for the lesser of two evils. So Dr. Kilimanjaro, what are your thoughts about voting for the lesser of two evils?
Well, see, again, that was one of the ones I told you earlier that it would be hard for me to personalize that because I have a position that we're not going to win either way with whoever they put in front of us. That's my first position. But having said that, there's a difference between, in your PhD at engineering, there's a difference between 10 and 9.
Yes.
There's a difference between 10 and 8. There's a difference between 10 and 7, 10 and 6, 10 and 5, 10 and 4. So there's a difference between numbers. There's a reason for that, incrementally. Not only is a difference between the number, but there are also decimals in between those numbers.
Yes.
So there's a difference between people that are being put in front of you. The first question is, what are your criteria for these people? And one of them, a discussion is, are you going to sit down and vote for a neo-Nazi? What is a neo-Nazi? What is a fascist? Well, go and study Nazi Germany, study Italy, study Poland, study Spain. Appreciate the final solution, the decision that the German population was making around populations that they saw as a drain on their society. We are seen as a drain on the society by whites. Some of the Hispanics, the ones who look like the Indians, they're seen as a drain on this society. There's a whole movement of tens of millions of white men armed and prepared in militias to kill you. And that's supported by Trump and defended by Trump. These Nazi movements are unfolding unfettered because the government under Trump poured gasoline on them, along with the fire that they already are. So you get, and this is why we wrote Bach, because we can explain why we knew it was going to come to this anyway. Because whenever you have an economy that's based on wage labor, and then the wage labor is phased out by the new technology, there's a battle over those jobs. And the white people are clearly going to fight for those jobs for themselves. And that's why the white working class didn't move to the left, it moved to the right, to the Nazis, to the right wing, to the fascists. And they're the ones out with these guns preparing to kill you. So if you are voting for that side, that's what I meant when I said there's a difference between 10 and 9 and 10 and 8, and 10 and 7. You have to then establish what's the criteria for your vote. Are you going to vote for a Nazi who needed time to consolidate power in that White House for another 4 years? Are you going to put him in there for another 4 years and have the police shoot you down? You know what he said. He said, when you're out there, you need to be shot. If you're out there stealing anything, if you're out there protesting and fighting, you need to be shot. He's the one who asked the military that he just fired, the Department of the Military guy that he just fired, to bring in the military into the cities to enforce laws. You know, and anybody who knows, once you bring a military, which is not a defensive unit, it is an offensive unit. They're there to kill. And so when you bring a military, I'm not talking about a National Guard or, little paramilitary police force. They're not on the level of the military, the Marines and the Army and the Navy, etc. These forces have a mandate to kill. And so that's why Trump just fired the guy, but the guy said, no, we're not going to do that. We shouldn't bring the military into this. Well, this is what Trump was putting on you in Portland. He was going to put them in there in Portland, in Minnesota, where black folk were out there, and whites, but mainly black. And in DC, he wanted to put the military out there on you. So I say all that to say, you have to begin to list what it is that you can't allow somebody to have in office for another 4 years. And then you begin to see it's not a lesser of two evils. It is clearly, fundamentally, there are things that you can't allow to be in place against you. And so that's how I would review it. I would put a checklist in place. I would deal with the Nazi question first. I would deal with the fact that this man who was the president, who said that he's going to give you a platinum plan now, he's been in office for 4 years. And he waits like 2 weeks before election time to vote to make up some platinum plan for you. You know what I'm saying? 2 weeks before the vote, he hasn't done anything for you, but he's going to wait the 2 weeks. So again, you begin to see how there are certain things that you can't check off a positive on. And number one, you certainly can't check off a positive on a Nazi who has put he's shown his Nazi foundation, because he's putting these Nazi folk on the Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
So for the next 20 years, unless somebody dies, that's a conservative or Nazi on the court, you're going to have these rulings coming down on the right-wing side, on the Nazi side. You're going to have all the court rulings coming down on that side because Trump was allowed to put 4 years of that in. So I've said that. Now on the other side, this Biden guy, you call him the lesser of two evils, but you saw what took place with the coronavirus under Trump. He's telling you not to wear a mask. He's telling you it's okay. Open those businesses back up, get back in school, don't worry about it, and look at this situation with this virus. You have almost 250 million people, close to 250 million people dead already since February. You have over 10 million infected. You have a situation where over 150,000 are being infected per day. And then you go, and this is for a population of less than 350 million. You go to China, and there are 1.8 billion, almost 1.8 billion people, and their numbers are heading towards zero.
Yep.
So you see, you have a rotten government apparatus that is incompetent dealing with a pandemic. It's incompetent. And so he's over that. So you don't just dismiss that. Let's make the next point. You don't dismiss it because disproportionately the people who are dying from this disease are Black. So how can you vote for someone when your parents and your children are dying from a disease that China has literally cured? I mean, at least gotten under control. And they have almost 5 times the population as the United States. So how are you going to get yourself in a position to defend somebody like that who's that incompetent, and you're living under it? Your parents are living under it. Your children are living under it. So you begin to check off things that won't work. Number 2, who's trying to get rid of the Obamacare? I mean, the health care for people who won't have no money.
Trump.
Every chance he gets to try to get rid of that health care, and it's not much, but it's enough to get you in the hospital. What I mean by that is it's enough for you to get treatment without them throwing you out the hospital immediately. I mean, in most cases, when we were coming up, if you didn't have an insurance card, they send you to the hospital that takes it. You know, and this is usually the most rundown hospital in the city or in the state. They send you there, and you're not going to get proper care. You had cancer or something like that, they just tell, okay, you got 3 weeks. You got 3 months to live. They're not even thinking about the treatments they could give you because they know you don't have any money to pay for it. So with the Obamacare, at least you're getting into the hospitals and you're getting treatment from it. So if you see someone going against that, how can you defend them? You see someone going against your ability to get into universities and get jobs and all, talking about affirmative action, trying to keep you from getting into universities, trying to keep you from getting money. How do you defend somebody who's trying to keep you from getting those opportunities, closing them all to you? So I'll end this. I would say the checklist is important. I would say, as I spoke to you earlier about being an engineer, is important to appreciate numbers, the difference between them. It also is important to actually distinguish between incremental progress and zero progress. So when someone says zero progress, okay, let's go and look at the areas that you are trying to identify where progress is taking place. I'm not telling you to vote for either one of them, but I am telling you this. Check off what they have against you and what they have for you that you benefit from. And then you see clearly what you cannot do. You see what you can't do. Now, the question that's in the context of this, and you told me about this, should you vote? You did ask me about that, and I was just thinking to myself, okay, well, what if you don't vote? You know, why do you think they tried to keep you from voting?
Right.
That's the first question. Because they know they'll then get the chance to put the people in the places of power that they wanted to put in power to keep doing the stuff that they wanted to do to you. In the South, it was very easy. While they were trying to keep you from voting, they wanted to keep you from having jobs. They wanted to keep you from being able to, ride down the street without getting shot by the police openly. I mean, they're shooting you now, but again, it was just so blatant. The things that they were trying to make certain that they were able to do. When Bull Connor was out there rounding up black people, Martin Luther King and all, put them in jail, they could do anything they wanted to do to you. This guy just passed recently. They bust his head every chance they got in Albany, Georgia. And the point of the matter was there was no rules of anything that stopped them from harming you. Again, they have the laws in place now, but again, going through their system, they don't stop it either. So I say all that to say, the task is to incrementally take what you can get while you're in the context of this country. The goal should be to get out of this country, to get organized and get out. But while we're here, we shouldn't just let white people determine without a fight, what they're going to do to you. You see, if you don't vote, if you don't make a decision on who you want to incrementally get the specific things that you're trying to get, then they're just going to put in place
who they want.
McConnell's. McConnell is in there now keeping you from getting the $1,200 stipend or the $600 a month, $600 a week for unemployment insurance. They say 21 million people are facing eviction. Of that 21 million, almost half of them are black. Facing eviction. This guy, what's his name? Biden did say that he's going to immediately put a moratorium in place around this eviction situation. Again, you'll see what he does, but the point of the matter was Trump has been there the whole time, and they've been fighting to keep you from getting the benefits that every other country, at least Western country, is given to their population. They get their $1,200 or $2,000 stipend each month. They get their unemployment insurance, some of them up to $1,000 a month. They get free health care. These are Western nations. They get that. Trump and those were keeping people, McConnell, whatever the guy's name over Senate, they were keeping people from getting that little basic money. So what is $60 going to do for you a week with unemployment insurance? What is $100 going to do? What's that going to pay for? It can't pay rent. It can't pay health care. It's not going to pay you for your utilities. Again, the incremental things that people need to have, they need to be able to check those off with the people that they're voting for. So utilities, lights, gas, water, rent, housing question, lease, the whole business of paying your mortgage, transportation, gas, etc. Basic things, education, funding, etc. Basic things that these Nazis are keeping you from getting. How can you vote for that when you know they're keeping you from getting that? Mm-hmm. So again, we do have to look at what we're going to get out of a situation. Now, again, they are not going to set up no black businesses for you.
No.
Or organize resources to give you that. You know what they're not going to do. So do you not vote because they're not going to set up any resources to give you black businesses? No, you don't. You have to be objective about these situations and practical. And that's what I'm actually asking you to be practical in this discussion about it. What are you getting incrementally on each side, and what's against you? What's going against you? And so again, the against you part has a lot of checks on it with respect to what we're facing now.
So Doc, this is what leads me to our last question. Before I even ask the last question, I do want to say I know that a lot of us, a lot of Black people had an issue with Biden, the 1994 crime bill, the statements he made in 1977 regarding the desegregation of schools and buses. Folks had an issue with Kamala and her history, the truancy laws in California, which disproportionately impacted Black families. They talked about how she fought for the death penalty fought against dismantling the death penalty in California, even though it was disproportionately applied to Black men. And so, a lot of people have issues with them, but I do understand what you're saying, Dr. Kilimanjaro. You're saying, look, definitely vote, but you said create a checklist. And you named the different things we should be looking at. You said education, economics, transportation, and you gave us a long checklist. And you said, look, I don't expect any of them to do anything for us, but there are some things that we can accomplish incrementally. And you said that. And so I definitely agree with you, Dr. Kilimanjaro, on that. So I know that we're winding down. We have about 9 minutes, probably 9 minutes or less time with you. My last question to you, Dr. Kilimanjaro, is this. What do you think will change in the lives of Black Americans with the election of Joe Biden?
Well, the first thing you won't have is the defense of the Nazi movement through the federal government itself. It won't be open defense. Now, Trump is burrowing in certain people in positions right now to be in those positions when he's gone. But you won't have that. And that's a most important movement because things are about to intensify and jump off next year. I can tell you that. Because of this coronavirus crisis, because of the fact that Black people are the ones most impacted by this with respect to jobs. I mean, we actually have about a 40%, 35 to 40% unemployment rate right now. It's not reported that way, but that's what we have. And you have a situation where people are on the edge with respect to rent and food and clothing. I mean, just being able to house themselves properly, they're catching hell. Utilities, etc. So you're going to have an intense struggle period just this year unfolding. So I can tell you the first thing is you don't want an open state against you. You don't want the state openly against you. And I'm glad you brought up the situation around Biden and Harris with respect to what she did and what he said. You get a chance to press them on that. You couldn't press Trump on anything. You're not going to be able to press him on anything. He's going to carry out the Nazi agenda that he's got in place. So the issue then becomes, what can we do to get mobilized in this time period? Because I told someone earlier about this, is that you get a chance for about a year to breathe, to get organized, to get yourself more in a position to get organized. It's a good point. Good point to bring it up. This is all you're getting. You're just getting a little breathing room because you have, let's say what you have. You have 70 million people who voted for Trump, the highest number ever for a losing candidate. 70 million. After what he did, with the coronavirus and all of this, the economy just completely broke down. Everything that he's done, keeping you from getting your little checks, the little stipends of $1,200, all this stuff he's done, and yet 70 million people voted for him. So those people are not going anywhere. And the vast majority of those are white people. And the vast majority of them are right-wing Nazi white people. And the vast majority of them are outside of the cities. You see, the Democrats won the cities, central cities. The whites on the outskirts in these countrysides, arming themselves, preparing militarily to kill you, they are there. So you at least will have a situation where the federal government is not directly stoking that. You'll have that. That's a good thing. You'll at least have in place a fight for that stipend each month. A fight for your unemployment insurance each month, $600, $700 a month, a week for that so you can pay your bills. You at least have that going on, okay? You at least have a situation where you can question racism. You can question it. Well, you weren't questioning any of that with Trump. So I listed 3 things that you're dealing with. You have a Nazi movement, which is over the whole thing, which is intensifying as the economy worsens, and that's going to continue to grow. You have a situation where your economic situations is going to stay in the dumps for another year at least, and in that time period, you're going to need some support from the government agencies. You weren't going to get that from Trump and the Senate. You weren't going to get it because they knew who were the poorest. They weren't going to give them anything. That's us. So that's number 2. Number three, healthcare. You weren't going to get Obama help. You weren't going to get anything with the healthcare. They let you die. That's what he was trying to do. He was going to just let you die because he wants you to die anyway. He would let you die. So you weren't going to get any of that. And the same thing with the policing. You weren't going to even get a discussion about the policing. Now, Kamala, she's not going to jump out and turn into somebody other than what she was. She was putting people in jail. Now, I'm going to say something about this because I had to say this closing because I know that I don't want to sound like I'm skipping around on something like this. But I'll tell you something. I'm not Kamala Harris. I ain't defending her. I have nothing to do with her. I do think that we should not have been selling drugs. That's my first statement. In China, they execute you. And there's a reason for that. China, after the Opium Wars, almost 2/3 of the population were on opium, on drugs. Ooh. Almost 2/3, some form of it. At least a half were strung out. This is almost 300 million people. So they learned a lesson from that. And when Mao Zedong took power, he was clear about this. Okay, turn your drugs in. We'll give you a fair exchange for this. But if you're caught selling drugs again, we're going to execute you. Mm. That's been in place the whole time since then. Not to turn into drugs. It's just they catch you with them. There's a firing squad waiting for you. Mm. So Black people shouldn't be poisoning their own community. That's the first thing I'm saying. We should not be a part of that. We shouldn't be doing rotten stuff and trying to get away with it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, that's the first thing I'm saying. Now, again, they'll argue that the crack cocaine, more years in jail than the powder cocaine. Mm-hmm. True. Give the white people the same amount of years that the Black people get.
That's right.
But put their ass in jail. Let me just say that. They need to pay a price for poisoning our community. And so if we had our own country, and you come up in there selling drugs, poisoning our community, prostituting our women, etc., we would execute you too.
That's right.
I'm saying that. I'm not talking about Kamala here.
Right.
I'm talking about me. We can't be rotten.
That's right.
And hope to get a pass at it. I ain't bringing these whites up. I'm talking about us. We can't keep being rotten. You see, we wouldn't even be here in this country if it hadn't been for rotten Black men selling us into slavery to these whites. Woo! And Arabs. We wouldn't be in this condition. The whites didn't go inland and get us. Blacks went inland and got us and dragged us to the coastlines where the forts that they helped the whites build sat, that they put us in. So go to Goree Island, go to Ghana, and go to Fort James. You know, go to these forts, dungeons, and see what our ancestors were pinned up in. Accra. Go there and understand that every group of those populations marched 300 to 1,000 miles from the inland to the coast. Mm-hmm. Black people were marching them along with the whites and Arabs.
That's a fact.
You see, so we are not defending rotten Black men and women selling drugs to our people. Just like in China, we get ourselves a country, we should be executing them, because we're not going to have a situation where you destroy a whole population of people so you can get rich. Mm. You see, so I'm not defending what she did. She's a part of their system. It's a rotten system. It's a system of racism where they give white people much less punishment for the things they do to us and do to others than Black people. But I'm just saying, if we had our own system, we would make sure our population was not a part of this degeneracy. And that's been our problem. We've been always trying to skate by. So those men who got put in prison for selling and poisoning people, they shouldn't have been doing it. That's my first statement. They shouldn't have been doing it. Get yourself organized and become a revolutionary, not a reactionary. You'll end up in jail, but you certainly will you'll actually be able to help end the system, but you will end up in a situation where people respect you while you're in prison. They'll fight for you while you're in prison. But you're not in prison doing degenerate things. I have to say that. You're in prison for doing something that was righteous. And that's our problem. 9 out of 10 of us are in prison for doing rotten things.
That's a fact.
9 out of 10. We should get that 1 out of that 10 out of there. We should do everything we can to get them out. But 9 out of 10 of our people in prison for being rotten. You know, why not be a fighter? Why not fight for something? Why not have heart? Why not have integrity? We don't make excuses for people out selling drugs. We don't make excuses for people murdering other black people, for people raping women. We don't make excuses for domestic violence on these women. 9 out of 10 of us as men are brutalizing these women, and maybe 1 out of 10 women are doing it. We shouldn't be doing that. And so I say all that to say, we're in prison on a majority of cases because we're rotten. Instead of fighting for a revolution in the country, we're fighting to be rotten. So again, yes, if you're going to tell me about the presidencies, I don't care anything about them. I say, well, what incrementally can we get? I don't care anything about them. I want to say that.
But Baba, I'm glad you said that, because someone would interpret this discussion as, well, is Dr. Kilimanjaro, is he rooting for Biden? Is he on their side? Is he? And you said, I don't care about either one of them.
I never mentioned his name. I just said check off the boxes for the people what they're doing. I didn't mention his name. Just see what they're doing and check your box off. And if your box have 10 X's over here and 2 over there, go with the 10.
Go with the 10.
Don't even look for the face on it.
Right.
No, I didn't say that. I was hoping you cleared that up.
I'm glad you cleared it up. And
Kamala Harris, I ain't defending Kamala Harris. I brought up China for a reason. China had a poisoned country due to the white people forcing opium on them. And when they saw clearly that that's what was happening, they execute the people who are selling drugs. And that stopped it. You don't have no problem. You don't have a drug problem in China. And you never have a drug problem in China because they will not allow that to occur again, because they knew the lesson from it. You saw what drugs did to us from the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. It put us back 50 years as far as the liberation movement. These drugs put us back 50 years, in my argument. All you have now is a lot of talkers running around talking, and the vast majority of people not doing anything. These drugs put us behind 50 years. This poisoning of our community, destroying of our families. You have a situation where the families are literally torn apart because of this drug stuff. So no, China figured it out. And we need black men and women to figure it out too. We can't have people running around murdering our people, like in Chicago.
Yeah.
Every week, 50 to 60 people get shot. And these are black people killing each other, black and brown, but mainly black people. And then a situation where the police chief is black. Yeah, the mayor is black. They're just letting it happen. Just think if that was happening in a white community. Just think if black people going in the white community killing whites.
Oh, it would be a state of emergency.
It was a state of emergency. State of emergency. No, we let these people think that they can do anything to us in our communities and get away with it. And I'm talking about our own people. And that's what's been occurring. So I had to say that. No, I'm not talking about vote for either one of you. You should register, get up in there, make a decision, check your box off. You don't even look at the faces, see what the people are doing. Don't get into personalities. Don't talk about what somebody did 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago. Deal with what you can see that they are doing now. And if they're not doing anything now, don't vote for them. I didn't vote for either one of them.
I didn't either.
So I'm just letting you know.
Yeah,
I'm saying that the opening is there for you to vote. You should make a decision once you got your check box off and you move forward. Yeah, that's what I said. And I did not allow this program to end by not telling you my true feelings about black people being degenerates.
Absolutely.
Running around here, poisoning our community, murdering our people, raping and destroying us. That's wrong. And we got to get that element out of our community, not defend that. We can't defend that element. We need to defend the element of the revolutionary people, the people who are fighting for us to have food, clothing, shelter, education, healthcare, and complete control of it. We need to fight for that. We need to fight for people who are organizing institutions, African-centered institutions in our communities. We need to fight for that. We need to fight for the people who have the food battle around food security, who are setting up these farms, urban farms. We need to fight for them. We need to fight for people who are actually fighting to take these houses over and fix them and clean them up and give people a chance to have housing, affordable housing. We need to fight for them. We need to fight for people who are preparing ways in which children can get education on the weekend, after school, and during the week as far as African-centered education. We need to fight for them. We can't be out fighting for people who are out murdering us.
Woo!
And again, we need to draw distinct lines between who we are fighting for. That's what I meant. Get your list out.
Yes.
Yeah, get your list out. And we haven't done that, Dr. Maat. I'm glad you gave me an opportunity to say this because I've been holding it. We shouldn't be arguing around here about Biden or Trump. We get our checkout list and move on. Because once we put them in there, we know what they won't do.
Come on.
You see, we may not know what they will do, but we know what they won't.
That's right, Bob.
Yeah, see, that's clear. That's important to know what somebody won't do. You won't see Kamala Harris out supporting the Nazis. She's not going to be out there running around with that. You won't see it. She may be doing other stuff. She had the police force after you. But the point of the matter is she's not going to be on certain other things. So I say all that to say you got to try to figure out what you can use. And we said that it's not lesser of two evils. It is, as an engineer, you're an engineer, what incrementally can we use? You know, what is closer to the ideal that we need to at least get past this stage of our struggle, because there's a major unfolding that's occurring right now. There's a major Nazi movement in this country that's tied directly to the collapse of the economy. Mm-hmm. And they know that they got to fight for their lives. That's why they got them guns. They're out there buying those guns. Now we're getting smarter, but we're not the ones at the forefront of this. So I'm glad that you brought this, allowing me to at least explain that.
Oh yeah, Doc.
But I do think we need to do some internal pruning first.
And look, Doc, I was attacked when I said that we need a purge. Oh, Dr. Maat, you're advocating genocide. You're advocating, I can't believe you. I said, we need a purge.
We need a purge.
It's true. It's true.
You and I on the same page. We need a purge. I said a pruning. I said a pruning, but you were right. The purge is a better word for a person.
You know,
we can't have these people running around doing rotten stuff and you defending them. No, you are not a political prisoner in jail for murder. Okay? You are not a political prisoner. He beat that woman to death. You're not a political prisoner as you rape that child, molest. You're not a political prisoner.
Right.
If you're out poisoning our community, selling drugs, you are not a political prisoner. That is not the term of political prisoner. A political prisoner is a revolutionary fighting against the state. That's why they're in prison. Because they fought the state. And we have about 10 to 15% of our people in prison now who fought the state. And we should be doing everything we can to get them out. You know, and so the point of the matter is everybody in there ain't in there for political prisoner status. They're in there because they were rotten as hell out here and they got caught. You see, they're not rotten one time. They're rotten numerous times and they got caught one time. And I say all that to say we've got to get better at facing people eye to eye on this, Dr. Maat, and letting them know I am not defending you in that activity.
Yeah, and Doc, I said a while ago, and I actually put this on Facebook. I said pro-Black doesn't mean that you defend Black degenerate behavior. That's not what pro-Black is. That's not what that's about. That everything that Black folks do, you just defend it or you make an excuse for it. That's not what it is.
I'm glad you said that, because I had to talk to someone earlier this week. I was just explaining to them, look, the only way you're going to correct yourself is for somebody to face you and say you were wrong in doing that and you admit to it and clean it up. You see, we got to say you're wrong and then have them admit to it and clean it up. That's their revolution. The revolution of a person is they overthrow a certain way they've been carrying themselves and do the opposite of that.
That's right.
So if you think it's okay to beat that woman up and beat her to death, your revolution is to overthrow that belief and then to spend the rest of your life helping the people that you did that to. You see the same thing with these drugs. How long did you sell them? How many people did you poison? Okay, admit to what you did. It wasn't right.
Right.
It wasn't just.
Right.
I ain't talking about the white man, I'm talking about you. It wasn't just. And then once you admit to it, you overthrow it and say, I shouldn't have done that. This is what I'm going to do in this community to clean this community up because I did all this rottenness.
That's right.
You see, if you don't get to that point, what good is talking about revolution? I see these Negroes running around here talking about revolution, ain't cleaned up nothing in their own life. That's why they can be so poisonous about that Kamala woman. I mean, she's wrong in putting those black men in jail and not putting the white men in jail the same way. She's wrong in keeping that black man in jail, knowing that he was that he was innocent, something like that. She was wrong in doing that. Mm-hmm. But I don't think you don't want to name call her that she's not black because she did that. She's black as tar to me. Her grandmama is black and her father was black. So all of us mix like this. I mean, all of us got these mixtures in us. So don't pull off something into a speculative, subjective argument. Get her on the rotten stuff she did and make her face up to that. You can't track a person down because she's got other people's blood in her. We all got a mixture of these white people. Always rotten.
Unfortunately,
they raped our parents. So get her on the rotten stuff she did.
She's doing. You said don't play that whole identity.
On that.
You said let's not play the identity politics.
No, just face her up on the rotten stuff she did and what she's doing. And whenever she does some rotten stuff, face her up on it. And again, I think that's a good thing to have somebody you can face them up on it. You couldn't face Trump up on anything. The point of the matter is he's going to do whatever he wanted to do. And you see what he's doing here. So let's close that and say that, yes, I'm just asking for an internal improvement on our people. That's what I'm asking for. I'm asking for a better logical mind out of our people. You know, logical mind meaning put your checklist up, and because we agreed that incrementally a 10 is different than a 9. Okay, so since we agreed that 10 is different from a 9, because 9 ain't the same thing as 10. So we all agree to that. So since that's the case, let's put our checklist up on both sides and figure out who can we put in a place to know what they're not going to do. Okay, so let's put them in place on what they're not going to do and move forward. Let's not get confused and get a situation where we give up our right to vote again and not have it and have them putting in place McConnell's and Trump's everywhere. You see, we are a benchmark holding that from occurring in most of these cities because we win the cities for the whites. We won those cities. Black people in Detroit won Michigan.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go and be clear on it. In Philadelphia,
I was just about to say in Philadelphia.
In Pennsylvania, black people are voting in Philadelphia. They helped to win Pennsylvania. In Georgia, that's Atlanta. Atlanta is winning Georgia for these whites. I mean, for Biden and them. So black people in the central cities are winning these cities for the whites. Now, again, what they're winning, we have to talk about what they won't do against us. That's what we should be concerned with. And that's a good thing to be able to appreciate what somebody won't do and organize ourselves around it. But thank you for allowing me the time to say what I had to say.
No problem.
I've been holding this a while.
No, it's okay.
I was happy you opened it up about this rottenness in our community that we gloss over. We glossing over it. Just give them a pass. Oh, you molested my child, but I'm gonna give you a pass.
No, you can't gloss over it.
Yeah, you shot my son in the head and murdered him for a pair of tennis shoes, but I'm gonna give you a pass.
No, we can't. You
poisoned a whole generation of people. Almost 25 years of crack people strung out, and you don't want to admit it. You don't want to say it was wrong, and you don't want to do anything in the community to correct what you did. I mean, I wouldn't even open my mouth about a president or a senator or another. I would look at, okay, what are we doing? And if we get that part of it cleaned up, we'll be able to deal with these whites. We will win. We'll be able to overthrow their foot on us. But until we clean ourselves up, we're not going to win anything. Anytime you can bring rappers, they bring the rappers out here with their platinum plans and all, and you sitting there agreeing with a rapper who has money. There's a reason why they are with Trump. You see, Trump gives these tax breaks, tax write-offs. You see, you ain't got no money, you know, and you ain't gonna get no tax write-off like them.
Not at all.
So why would you be agreeing with someone who has different class interests than you? That's what I meant by the class interest. They have different class interests than you, and they're not thinking about you. They're thinking about their class interests. Oh, I saved $1 million on taxes last year. Trump gave me 15 million. Yeah, I saved 15 million on this because of him. No, they thinking of their class interests. So we got to get, that's what I meant by we got to get smarter, more intelligent, you know, more sober, what's that word, practical, appreciating that we shouldn't lock ourselves into this country anyway. We should be preparing and organizing. That's why you held the book up, organizing to get ourselves out of here. We should be doing that. I mean, again, we explain why. We should be organizing ourselves to get out of here. But, you know, we're caught up in trying to get little increment, you know, handouts from these people, and they're not going to come through. So again, thank you for the time.
Thank you so much.
I hope we were clear. No,
we very clear.
I ain't for Kamala. I ain't for Biden. I'm not for what's his name, Trump or any of them. I just get your checklist out and see what it is that you can check off on each side, and then you don't even have a face by it. Just go on and pull the lever, and the ones who got the list of numbers that you that's the one. Right. That's how you do it. So don't personalize it.
Well, family, I just want to say, share this show. Dr. Tdka Kilimanjaro, as always, dropped a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom. So family, if you're watching on Facebook, make sure to head on over to YouTube, subscribe to my channel, dr.maat.msu, hit the notification bell so that as soon as I go live, you will be notified. Dr. Tdka Kilimanjaro, thank you so much.
You're going to have people chasing after me now. You're going to have all the people in the community chasing me down. You know, why you want to be so hard on us? Well, you know we're going to have that now. You're going to have
they drag me all the time, Doc.
Yeah. Well, I hope you can defend me. I mean,
I would always defend. You know, I would, Doc. If I see any of the foolery, you know, I definitely would speak up.
I know.
But thank you so much, Doc, for coming on. Yeah. And I know you're a very, very, you know, busy person. And so again, I always appreciate you taking time out of your schedule and coming on just to share your knowledge and your wisdom. I on this subject, I had to pick your brain. I had to pick your brain.
Yeah, you know,
I wonder what Baba. I said, I wonder what my Baba would. Yes.
I hope you get this out of it, that I'm just saying we need to clean ourselves up.
Yes, absolutely.
We need to do right. And once we get ourselves cleaned up and do right, we will turn the tide. But we can't turn the tide being rotten.
No,
and we've got too many rotten people justifying being rotten. And I'm just fighting against that part internally, because once we clean that up, we'll be able to march out as an army, unified in such a way to win. But right now, you can't win with rotten people online. You can't do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So thank you so much, Doc. You take care.
You too, dear.
Let's combat and fight back with no tracks. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classes. We keep grinding on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth and we tuned in.